Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Edible Software. Today, we are going to be talking about receivables reports or AR reports. So, uh, essentially, what we're just doing today is going through this list of reports. So, it's going to be a pretty short training today. Some of these I'm going to be talking about in links, some of them I may just kind of skip over because I don't have a lot of information in this particular database to show you examples. But regardless, I will discuss what each report is for and how it can be used. So, starting off with under receivables AR reports, we're going to start with the AR register. So, the AR register is very straightforward. It's simply showing you all of your invoices uh, between the selected date range. Now, it's going either based on ship date or delivery date, whichever you want. Um, and if I back this up, I might have a little bit more to show you. Requery. Yep. So here I can see all of my invoices. I can see the status of each invoice. So it will show you voids if you had any voided invoices. It will show you regardless of the status, regardless of the balance or whether it's been paid. And then in here, of course, you can click on the info and see the information for that invoice. So you can see, details, payments. Basically takes you to our normal invoice history page. Right? Of course, you can print this out. The printout's going to look exactly like this grid, but that is essentially what this report allows you to do. Is it allows you to see all of your invoices between that date range and gives you the payment status and the billing status for those. All right, moving forward. Bank reconciliation, we've kind of already talked about in our payables trainings. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and take a look. But just as a reminder, uh, essentially what this is it allows you to run this uh, for a bank account, for a specific bank account, as of a specific date. So you would put in whatever your statement date is. And this is what you would compare to your actual bank statement. So when you have your printed bank statement, you can run this and see the difference between your balance as per your general ledger, your balance as per your bank statement, and you can see any outstanding deposits and outstanding credits outstanding checks that you might have. So if there is a difference between the two, your balance per your general ledger and the balance per your statement should be the same, and this will show you any outstanding deposits or checks within that time period. So here I can preview this, and it'll show me those outstanding checks. And here, this will show me my outstanding deposits. So these are simply checks that haven't been reconciled yet under payables, and these are simply batches that have not been marked as deposited. All right. So moving forward, cash receipt short payments. So if you had any short payments for your cash receipts, this would show those short payments. Again, you choose your applied date range. This is based on the batches that you are selecting. You can select this for individual batches if you wanted to. But essentially, it's just going to show you those short payments. Right now, I don't have any data for that to show you examples. So I do apologize about that. I won't be able to show you that. But if you do have any short payments, or uh, if you are shorted quite a bit on your payments, this is a good report to show you who shorted you and when. All right. Corporate address labels and customer address labels are pretty straightforward. So you can print out labels for shipping if you wanted to. Um, and this is just allowing you to choose how you want to. So these are for the Avery 5160 labels that are loaded into a laser printer. So it is a sheet of labels, just as you can see right here. Here is an option to capitalize names and addresses. So if you remember when we went through our vendor reports in that video, pretty much the same exact thing as far as your vendor labels. So same exact concept. We can choose all corporates. We can select our corporates if we wanted to. We can choose corporates and specify how many labels. So we can say 30 labels, or we can choose a corporate and then specify the number of labels in here. So That is completely up to you how you want to print your labels, but essentially it is just printing out these labels with the shipping information or with the address information for that corporate. So down below that, we have a customer address labels option, which is exactly the same thing. The only difference is we do have a couple of other options. Here we have uh, customers who have not purchased since, so you can basically exclude certain customers when printing out all customers. If you're printing out a group of customers or selected customers, uh, this still will apply. However, if you're printing out for specific customers, I would assume you know who has not purchased. Again, there's the capitalized names and addresses just to make sure that we have all of that information looking nice and tidy. And then same thing, we can print out a specified number of labels, or we can print, uh, sorry, we can print out 30 labels or a specified number of labels. And then, of course, we can specify whether we're printing out just customer addresses, uh, or if we wanted to print out alternate delivery addresses as well. So if you had an alternate ship to location entered in for that customer, you can print out addresses for them, and then you can specify the phone number as well. So same exact, uh, pretty much the same features, just a couple of extra options on the customers themselves. So moving on, customer ledger. So this is pretty much just a printout of what we were looking at on our last training when we looked at the customer master file on the ledger screen. So here we can select a specific customer, or we can look at individual or all customers if we wanted to. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Carnival Fruit Company. Again, we can choose a date range specifying requested delivery date or build date. So it'll show you payments or invoices based on that. I'm actually going to back this up just a bit. If we were printing for multiple customers, we could group by customers or by transaction type. So that's completely up to you how you would want to show that. And then we can choose what we want to include. So if we want to only see invoices for this ledger listing, we can see only invoices. Again, those are just billed invoices. We don't show shipped or open invoices. We can show just receipts, credit memos, or of course all. And then if you are working with our Forex option, we can choose to show this in home currency or the customer's currency. But when I click preview, this is essentially what I see. So it shows me my customer, it shows me my transaction number, so my payment ID, shows me my date, my PO number, shows me my batch number, and the total amount. So that is essentially showing me all of these payments and invoices and credits that I might have. All right. And then, of course, we do have the ability to export this information to Excel so that you can manipulate it as needed. Okay. Customer listing. So this is essentially just a list of your customers. Again, very similar to the vendor listing that we had under our AP reports. We can choose specific customers. We can choose specific groups. We can sort or we can filter by seller or sales rep. So based on the seller that is assigned or the sales rep that is assigned to those customers, we can even sort by state or filter by state if we wanted to. We can filter by active status. We can filter by whether or not we want to show the corporate and the customer or just the customer. And then depending on what you have selected here, you'll see that some of the options change. So if I said customer only, now we're looking up by, or we can order by customer name or by salesman. Um, and again, the option to include the customer ship to address if that is something that you wanted to do. So if we are including the customer ship to address, that does take away our ability to export to Excel. So just bear that in mind. But essentially, this is what we are looking at. It just shows us our customer information, our terms, our address, when they were created, phone number, last purchase, and what is their active status. And just to show corporate and customer, this shows you the corporate and the customer right below. So very, very similar, but that is pretty much it. It is just a list of your customers. Uh, if you wanted to include credit limit or anything like that, you could also include that information as well. All right. So customer notes. I won't have anything to print for this one as well, but in our previous trainings, we talked about those reminders under file that you can also create for customers under the notes tab. This is pretty much just a report showing all of those customer notes. So we can choose by note topic. We can look at notes created between certain dates. We can filter by customer, and then we can order by the note topic or the customer, or we can order by the note topic. But that is pretty much what this is for. It's just showing you all of the different notes that have been created for different customers. So here, yeah, I don't have anything. You saw it kind of blip. Basically means that I don't have anything to show you at this point. But that is what that report is for. All right, moving ever along, we are going to come down to customer price level. Now, I have run this before. It takes a little bit of time to run, so I'm not actually going to do that on this training, so we're not sitting here for a little bit. But essentially, what this does is it allows you to choose a price level. And when you click print or preview, it's simply going to show you the customers that are tied to that price level and their information, such as their address and everything and their contact information. So that is pretty much what this report is for. It just allows you to see customers assigned to a particular price level. All right. Big one, customer statement. So this is where you would print out a customer statement when you want to send it to them. So depending on your settings, your statement might be assigned to your corporate or to your customer in your system settings, depending on what you have selected there. It will show you whether or not we're going to be looking up a particular corporate or a customer. So right now we are specified to my corporate. When you have it set to corporate, you do have three options on what kind of statement type. You have an open item report, you have a balance forward report, and you have a balance forward with item details if you wanted to. So, of course, the open item just gives you the ability to run as of. So this is just going to show you invoices and credit memos with balances as of this date. So here I can go ahead and put in, we'll go ahead and go to the end of the month. And again, I can select a specific corporate ID if I wanted to, or I can just, if I leave it blank, if I don't select anything, then it will just print out for all of them. It will do a page break for each customer, so or for each corporate, so you don't have to worry about uh, information getting bleeding into each other. And then that's the same thing with sending email. So when you decide to send email out of this, if you were going to email this statement, it's going to email the customer's individual statement to their corporate email address. So you don't have to worry about uh, one corporate receiving another corporate's uh, statement. But here I'm going to go ahead and select just a couple to Carnival, and I'll do couple of these. So we've got four customers or four corporates selected. Again, if you're printing, you can choose plain paper or pre-printed. We've got some group by options. We can enter in some notes if we wanted to. Down here, it is initially just including balances for billed invoices and credit memos. However, if you wanted to include shipped or delivered invoices as well as open invoices, you do have those options just to show the customer basically what's coming down the pipeline versus what is actually on their ledger currently. We can print running balances, and then we can choose to exclude open credit memos or open receipts. So those are just a couple of other options depending on what you want to show. But once I have all that set and I have my corporate selected, I'm going to click preview. And this is essentially what the open item looks like. So right here for this waterfront, it looks like out of those four, the waterfront is the only one that has an open balance on their ledger. So here it shows me my invoice. It would show me my invoice number or my credit memo or my open receipt number. It will show you the PO number, the date, the description, and the balance. If I'm running, and down at the bottom, excuse me, I do have my summary. So I have my current amount. If I had amounts that were uh, aged over a certain amount, I can see those periods. And then, of course, the total down at the bottom. Now, if I choose to go balance forward, click preview. So here, I can actually see my historical information. I can see my invoices, my credit memos, my receipts. So this is going to show you no matter what the balance is, this is going to show you all of your, this is going to show you all of their, that corporate's information. So here we can see an opening balance and we can see that I still have a zero balance down at the bottom, but this is just going to show you within that range, this is, these are the transactions I had and these are the amounts. So same thing here. And if I have PO numbers, of course, it'll show those PO numbers. And so here I can see I had an invoice here, I had a payment here. So that is what canceled those out. All right. So that's the balance forward. And then balance forward with item details is just a little bit different. It shows me the description for each of those invoices that I had. So here I only had one invoice and it shows me my items underneath that invoice. So here, as you can see, it's a little bit bigger. And what I do want to do is I want to show you that running balances as well, just to show you how we got to that total. All right. So that is basically the customer statement. So back under receivables and AR reports to invoice register. So this right here is very good. It's very similar to the invoice register or the invoices summary report under sales. However, it is a little bit different since we are under receivables. We can select by the requested delivery date or the ship date. Again, we can specify a date range based on that date option. We can order by the invoice number or the alternate invoice number, and we are tracking missing numbers. So if we voided an invoice number, it would show you what's been voided, or if we started an invoice number and canceled it. For those of you who don't know, when you start a sales order number or a purchase order number, or really any transaction for that matter in the system, it does use up that number. It does use up that number in the system, and it's basically a use it or lose it situation. So here we are actually tracking those missing sales order numbers if we started it and didn't follow through with it. Here, of course, I can specify whether I want to print my open receipts or my credit memos along with my invoices. And then I can choose which invoices I want to print if I wanted to go by billed status. So here I'm just going to go ahead and do all invoices. I'm going to click preview. And here, as I said before, uh, we've got our list of invoices, we've got our status, the date that we selected, and we've got our invoice amount. And then we can see any missing or archived documents that we might have. So this number 15 looks like it was started and then just not completed. And here we can see credit memos, voids, anything like that. All right, and then of course down at the bottom, it will give you the report summary, total number of invoices based on that billed status, and then the total amounts. So that's the invoices register, pretty straightforward. So moving forward, open receivable aging. So for those of you who like to, excuse me, for those of you who are doing month end comparisons against your general ledger and your edible reports, this is the report that you would actually compare to your accounts receivable general ledger account, just to make sure that everything looks correct. So in here, if you were doing month end, you would run it as of the same date as your. So let's say if we were running for the end of October, we would run up to the same date as your general ledger, and then if we're just comparing, we really don't need to run summary or detail. We would just run summary. And then at the end of the report, we would see the total balance that we have in our AR. And we would just make sure that that balance matches. Now, for those of you who are not using this to compare against your general ledger, of course, this can be used for many other things. The open receivable aging essentially is just showing you what is currently on your AR right now. So, what is still owed to you as far as your invoices and as far as credit amount or credit or open receipt balances that haven't been applied yet. So of course we can filter this by customers or by sellers or by account managers. So we can choose any of these options up here. We can specify when we do this up to date, whether it's the requested delivery date or the build date. Again, if you are comparing to your general ledger, run by the requested delivery date because that is when the invoices do hit the general ledger. We can choose a report type. So here's summary. It's just going to show you the customer and then the total amount that they still owe or that is currently on their ledger. So if I run this, it is just showing that customer and it's showing their terms, last payment amount, and then it's just showing again those balances. So here I have $30. Sorry, $30 for Capella Farms, or a negative $30 amount, so I can tell that I have a total credit balance for them. And then here I've actually got my waterfront and my new Sea Escape. I've got balances running over 90 days that I need to take a look at. So that's the summary. Now, if I wanted to see details of those balances, then all I would do is select that detail option. And when I preview, it's actually going to break this down. It's going to show you, okay, here I have that open receipt. Is that $30 I was looking at? And if I wanted to look at that waterfront and new Sea Escape, I can see, okay, here's $141 for this invoice that was created back in July. All right. So again, the grand total doesn't change. It's just how you want to see that information. If you want to see a summary for the customer or detailed information. All right. You can also change this report around based on grouping if you wanted to group by corporate or any of those options that we're filtering by. If you want to age by invoice date or by the due date. If you wanted to order by the customer ID or the customer name. Landscape is just how we are previewing or printing this out. You can reset your aging periods or change your aging periods. Now, these are based on your system settings initially, but these can be changed. Again, what kind of currency we're running into. So if we are running this comparison for our month's end, we may want to change this for different customers. But we would be running for our home currency if we were comparing against the GL. So forget that I said that. Then the last thing, of course, is what we want to include or what we want to exclude. If we only want to print balances in the selected period, exclude credit memos from the report, exclude debit memos, print only debit memos, print only open receipts, so on and so forth. So these are just a couple of different options that we have to change around the look of this report. Right? And then, of course, we can export this to Excel as well, so that you can manipulate the format or however you want to see it. All right. Now, very similar to the open receivable aging is the outstanding receivable. So I'm going to come back to the overdue customer report, but the outstanding receivables is going to show me very similar, but it's not just based on it's not just based on the date range. It is an up to date, and it's only going to show me what is outstanding. So here I'm going to leave all my customers. I'm going to go ahead and select for the end of the month again. Actually, I'm going to run the same way. I'm going to run for the end of last month. And again, summary is just total for your customers, and detail will break that down to show individual transactions. Again, I can choose to include delivered invoices if I wanted to, so shipped invoices. If I only want to print open receipts or exclude debit memos or print only debit memos, so a lot of the same, couple of the same options. But when I click preview, here it's just showing you what is outstanding, what is outstanding per that date. All right, and then detail, of course, breaks that down even further. All right, so that is basically it. So we don't necessarily care about the aging periods. As you can see, we're just showing those amounts, and that's basically it. And again, we can choose if we want to report in the actual exchange or actual currency, or I apologize, if they're running forex, whether we're going by the actual foreign exchange rate for that transaction date, or if we're going by the current foreign exchange rate. Okay, so moving forward, overdue customer report. So this is just going to show a report that is overdue on their invoices. So here, again, we can select by customer, salesman, account manager. So a lot of the same filtering options. Requested delivery date and apply date up to. So here I'm going to back this up again. And again, I can select my aging periods if I want to. So as you can see, these last three reports are showing a lot of the same information, just in slightly different ways. Um, Here, I'm going to go ahead and click summary and preview. So here you can see it's just showing me customers that are overdue. So the list is a little bit different. And preview. So it shows you all those. It shows you when the invoice was. And then it shows you can also specify days overdue. So here I can see my overdue days because it shows me my terms. Now everything's COD for me, so basically everybody's overdue at this point. But it is based on those terms for that particular invoice. All right, and then here I can include all due invoices. And that didn't change it very much, but that is essentially it. All right, so moving forward, payment instruments report. So this is very similar. It's the batch distribution recap that we saw in our last, actually, it was a couple of trainings ago when we talked about the Payment Refund Center. There was a hot button that basically brought us to this report. But essentially, it's just breaking down that batch, what was paid in it. And again, we can do a summary or a detail. So we can select the batch. We can select by payment instrument if we wanted to. So there's two different ways we can sort this. Let me back this up again. And I can group by day, week, or year, whichever makes more sense to me. But here I'm going to go ahead and click preview for the summary. And this here shows you the batch, and it shows you the day. And here it shows you the payment instruments and what was collected for each of those batches, what was collected for each of those batches on those days and how much. So this is just a summary, so it's just giving us our totals for the amount collected for each payment instrument. And here in my detail, it will break down for individual transactions within those batches. So here I can see those payments. I can see the customer that it was applied to and all that information. So that is the payment instruments report. It's just that AR batch distribution recap. Payment refund report is also a batch distribution report, very similar to it. Um, Here I can see I can look for different AR batches if I wanted to, or individual batches. I can, uh, if I'm going for all batches, then I can filter by apply dates. And again, I can choose summary. I can do a batch summary, payment receipts, payouts, and then I can filter by AR batch or by a specific customer group if I wanted to. And I can also filter by deposited or undeposited. So that's completely up to us. And then if I wanted to, I can include a distribution summary if I wanted to. But here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and preview this as is. So the detail for these batches are pretty straightforward. It's just showing you the total batch, the customer, and the amount. So here it's showing us the payment ID, customer, the invoices that were paid within those batches, and the total for each batch number. Now, if I want to include the distribution summary here, it's a very similar, or pretty much the same exact report that we have been looking at. But then it gives us my batch summary, or excuse me, my totals down at the back. So then if I decide to run summary, so very similar, but it's basically consolidating. It's not giving me all of that same information after each batch. It's essentially just giving me my basic information, what was paid within that batch, who was paid within that batch. Pretty straightforward. So that is that. So that is the the customer payment refund report. So it's just showing you the information for those batches, who was paid, by what, and by how much. So there's different ways to run this. So please play around with that, and if you have any questions, please let us know. All right. Prospect customer listing. So in our last training, we did talk about this prospect customer screen. So this is just a listing of prospect customers. I don't believe I have any right now. Nope. Uh, but essentially, this just allows you to see the list of prospect customers and their information, and that is basically it. All right. And the very last report that we have, or the last couple of reports we have, is the weekly aging, which is very similar to the open receivable aging, but it is based on weeks. So I can select by customer. I can exclude credit memos and exclude customer ID and phone from the report. But here it's very straightforward. It's just showing you the customer, the total amount based on the week, and then the totals at the back, and it does give you your last paid information as well, and some of the contact information. But that is pretty much it. So it's uh, an even more summarized version of the open receivable aging, just purely based on week. All right. And then the other one, weekly receivables aging. I preview this. As you can see, it's just a little bit different, but essentially the same information. Customer, we don't have as much contact information or anything like that, but we do have the customer. We now have the terms, and we are specifying the number of weeks that we're only seeing up to 4 weeks, and then above. And then we do have the detail option in here as well. So if we wanted to show details for this, oh, I didn't check this before. This might take just a bit, but essentially the major difference is the weekly aging only gave us that very strict summary. This does give us the ability to show details and show individual transactions, much like the detail option in the uh, open receivable aging report. Okay, so depending on how long this takes, I may go ahead and close this and end the training here. All right, but as you can see, a lot of these reports, some of them showing a lot of the same information, just in different ways. Here we go. So very similar, just a little bit more information about the customer, that contact information we were talking about, and the individual transactions. All right. So that is basically it as far as the AR reports are concerned. Again, just like any of the other report strings we have, if you have any questions or anything like that over these reports, or just want a little bit more information on them, let us know, and we will go ahead and talk to you about that. Um, Thank you all for coming again. Thank you for choosing Edible Software and choosing to learn a little bit more with me. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again next time. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.